Hey there, it's Tom Ryan, founder and CEO of ICR. Before we get into the next episode, I wanted to ask that you subscribe to the show. It'll help us get even more unique and interesting guests on the podcast and in turn continue to educate management teams and the growing ecosystem that creates value for fast-growing private and public companies. And while you're at it, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating. Very much appreciated.
We do a check for endometriosis, which is, a women's health issue. And it takes the current medical system 9 years to assess that. 9 years to connect the pain that a female is experiencing. It's done now in 60 seconds.
If you're experiencing symptoms like chronic pain or digestive issues, you want to get diagnosed and treated as quickly as possible. But getting those answers from the medical system can often take months, or under certain conditions, years. One company is trying to change that paradigm using the power of AI.
We make it possible for literally any human on the planet, or 6.5 billion who've got a phone, or the other bit who are within arm's reach of one, to pick up a mobile device and point it at a health concern and get a really accurate assessment of what they might be dealing with.
My name is Tom Ryan, and this is Welcome to the Arena, the ICR podcast. Each week, I sit down with today's business leaders to give you an inside scoop on some of America's most prosperous public companies, their origins, their challenges, and the keys to their success. Today, we're joined by George Tomeski. George is the CEO of Helfia.ai, a company that's creating what they call a new operating system for human health. Their platform will allow you to diagnose a whole host of health conditions using only your smartphone, and they hope to bring that diagnostic power to billions of people around the world who lack access to proper medical care. George's experience spans various roles in the tech and the investment sectors, and he has a strong passion for the transformative power of technology. He also has extensive leadership experience and strategic insights into business growth and development, and we're excited to chat with him today. Let's enter the arena with George Tomeski. Maybe you can just take us through your background leading up to the Helfia.ai opportunity.
Yeah, kind of diverse and mixed, just largely because I was unemployable and probably still am. So
I hear you.
Yeah, I sort of have been very fortunate in a lot of ways in that I've been able to sort of pursue my curiosities and out of those build businesses and create opportunities for myself and people around those. So in a galaxy a long way back, I had a real passion for marketing, advertising, and this idea that through communications you could influence the way people thought about products and services.
Yep.
And, get them to buy stuff. So I founded 3 different advertising groups and sold all those to multinationals.
Yep.
So I did that 3 times. And toward the back end of those agencies, we were representing a lot of technology brands, search engines, internet companies, and so forth. And it kind of evoked a second passion. That was, hey, look, the collision between technology, mobile, and all of these capabilities that were emerging would create some really interesting opportunities. And that was when I sort of moved into founding a couple of tech startups, a mobile company in sports and entertainment, an IPTV platform, and then some investing, and then onto Helfia.ai.
Yeah. And so how did the idea for Helfia.ai come about? Like, what did you see in the marketplace where you kind of like, hey, listen, I'm going to go for this. There's a huge void in the market, and we think we can really solve some challenges and pain points.
So my mother went to the same doctor for 11 years with the same complaint.
Yep.
To be told a couple of different things along the journey. And there was a moment towards the back end of that where he wasn't there and another doctor saw her and sent her for a test. And then she was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal stomach cancer. So he was a woman who went into the medical system regularly, a couple of times a year, and complained about the same thing. And it was missed. And if that had been picked up on day 1, day 300, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, that diagnosis would have been radically different, and it wasn't. And so that got me wondering, was that a one-off, or does that happen regularly? And, she went on to have treatment, which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, an experimental treatment, which, ultimately, thankfully, saved her life as well.
Yeah.
So I experienced sort of both sides of the system. The first one was, how did anyone miss this? The body's saying stuff. It's pretty clear, and it was missed for over a decade. And then secondly, just the cost and the pain of treating something like that and surviving it emotionally as well as financially is an Everest.
Brutal.
Yeah. And then just personal experience around that as well. I went to a doctor for a checkup and she said to me, "Do you know, it's been 10 years since you've been." You kind of go, wow, right? They say time flies, but health time sort of flies a whole lot more. And in Australia, where I'm from, everybody's got a personal experience of somebody who's succumbed to skin cancer, yeah? So those things got me thinking about health and healthcare and, could there be another way for you to identify conditions way, way earlier than the system could? And that's when we started our first experiments 4.5 years ago around using AI models to sit as close as we can to the human biology and read signals and see if we can read stuff early and maybe find a way to detect conditions at the earliest onset. And if we could do that, we could completely change the course of certain health conditions and certainly, have a positive impact on people's health and well-being.
Yeah, and just to stay on that track, the traditional approaches to kind of centralized medicine and healthcare, it leaves so many people out of the system. People who have the means and the wherewithal, they can get concierge doctors and they can do all this stuff. But most people on earth are excluded from the system that we have today, correct?
Yeah, correct. And so as I dug into the sector, the revelation you just touched on and a whole lot more point to increasingly declining access for most people. I mean, increasingly health for the 1%, yeah?
Yep.
For those who can afford expensive treatments or wearables or have access to doctors. Even in a country like this where, 4 or 5 trillion spent in public money each year on a system of health, we've created a class of medical poverty out of it as well. So it's a big issue, access. And still, I think, Tom, we spend 17 trillion a year on health globally and still 4 billion people have no doctor to see, right? So, it's a sector that's as big as oil and defence in terms of profitability. And it's a sector that since the 1980s has been presiding over really declining health outcomes, declining access, declining life expectancy.
Yep.
And, in a country like yours, the UK, mine in Australia and others, I think we live longer when we smoked indoors and drove without seatbelts.
Yeah. Unbelievable, right?
Right. In terms of a data point, yeah, it's incredible given the money that goes into it. And Tom, given the innovation, you turn the television on and there's innovation and medical marvel after medical marvel piled up. And how is it that all the things that we're touching on are still characteristics of a system that receives so much money, and so much innovation, yet the outcomes are in such systemic decline? Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. How does Helfie actually work? What is the Human Health Network?
So let me tell you what Helfie does first, and then I'll sort of touch on how it works.
Yep.
So we make it possible for literally any human on the planet, or 6.5 billion have got a phone, or the other bit who are within arm's reach of one, to pick up a mobile device and point it at a health concern and get a really accurate assessment of what they might be dealing with, yeah? So, for example, just take a selfie, in other words, scan your face, and we can do a general health checkup which covers, all of your vital indicators, your heart rate, your blood pressure, your HRV, your respiratory rate, your stress levels, all in about 30-odd seconds. And those tests cost a couple of cents at a time, 15, 20 cents for a check.
Yeah.
Stick your tongue out and we can tell you whether or not you've got any vitamin deficiencies. Take a picture of your body a bit further away from your face and we can look at your body fat, your fat distribution, and the type of body fat you might be carrying. Cough into your phone and we can detect respiratory conditions from things like COPD to tuberculosis and COVID. Hover the phone over your skin and we can check for things like skin cancers. Take a photo of the thing you leave in the toilet behind you and we can check for things like bowel cancers. Talking to your phone or look at your phone, we can look at things like dementia and early stages of neurological decline and so forth. So as we sit here today, we cover about 30 different health conditions just through your phone and just for a couple of cents at a time.
I would imagine Helfie gets better the cameras on the iPhone and all of that stuff too, right? Or is that a factor?
It is. All phones, Samsung, iPhones, even, the cheaper smartphones, all have phenomenal sensing capabilities. So it's not just camera, it's audio, it's motion, etc. I believe one of the companies will have a temperature measure on their phone in the next sort of 12 months as well, which sort of changes what you can do.
Incredible.
Yeah, look, it is. And so that sort of combination of mobile capability, obviously AI as well, means that we can sit at what I call the earliest computational boundary of risk for a human in terms of a health condition. And if we can do that, and we pick up stuff early, most of the stuff that kills us is stuff that we know to identify and stuff that we can treat successfully. And, our kind of vision is no one should succumb to a preventable health condition. Certainly no one should suffer from a preventable health condition, not in this day and age, right? Not with the sort of technology we have at our disposal.
Yeah. You mentioned individuals as customers, but your customers can also be healthcare organizations. Is that right, George?
Yeah, so I never expected to be engaging with healthcare providers or, as we are at the moment, with countries all around the world for population-wide rollouts of our capability. I always went out to build something that you could put in your hand and that could make a profound difference to your health at super low cost and conveniently. So our focus has always been on solving a problem for a human, somebody who's got something to deal with from a health viewpoint that they either can't or don't know that they need to deal with it or can't afford it or it's inconvenient or whatever the reasons that exist that prevent us from getting stuff checked. But what's happened is as people have looked at our capability, governments particularly, and they realise, hang on a second here, we can screen populations for all sorts of health conditions and have super intelligence around what might be happening in our population to inform policy and stuff that they're doing, that we're having just phenomenal engagements with governments and large-scale multinationals for population-wide rollouts of our capability.
And so, George, once Helfie identifies a potential condition, what are the next steps for the user? Do you prompt that user? Is there follow-up to it? How does that work?
Firstly, just in addition to the checks, what we actually do is pair every human with their own health algorithm,
Yep.
And that has the capabilities I've just described in terms of health checks. But we can also just answer your queries around health. You can take a photograph of your pills and say, what do I do with these?
Yeah.
You can feed it documents. You can get your doctor to email your algorithm with their report or whatever it is that they're sending you and so forth. And so it becomes hyper-personalized.
Yep.
And so when we assess you as having a certain condition or the algorithm says that you might have tuberculosis or you might be dealing with a high-risk skin lesion or that your blood pressure is a bit high or whatever it might be, there are a couple of pillars that we sort of turn to in terms of a resolution. The first one is, what do you need to do medically about this potential condition? And that's pretty clear. And, in the next couple of months, the algorithm or your AI will be able to call a doctor for you and say, hey, Tom, I've just assessed George as having, a high-risk skin lesion, for example. He wants to come and see you. I'm going to send over the images. I'm going to send over my assessment. And when can he come and see you? So all of that connectivity back into the healthcare system is possible. Secondly, it'll tell you what to do practically. So what should I do right now, given I might have the following condition? And then thirdly, it tells you what else you need to ask. What do you need to know about this? And it's remarkable to me, again, when I look at healthcare, when you just realize the information gaps people have between stuff that they might be dealing with and things they should know, right? I mean, one of the top searches on Google is, what does my blood pressure mean?
Yeah.
So here's a human who's got a blood pressure measure somewhere, either from a sleeve or through a doctor or whatever it might be, and they still don't know what these readings mean.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right?
Crazy.
So the ability to impart information in real time against an AI assessment is pretty important. And then if it's something serious, we'll get you to check again through the algorithm.
Yep.
The algorithm sort of, double checks itself and makes sure that it's not missing a trick in terms of, how it's looking at whatever it is that it's assessing from you.
Obviously, the ability to diagnose 30-plus conditions using only your smartphone is revolutionary. But with all the different things that can go wrong with the human body, I was interested to hear from George how they narrowed down which diseases they wanted to tackle first.
70% of all human deaths around the world are the result of a preventable health condition. And so is a hell of a lot of pain and suffering that goes with that. I mean, I gave you my mother's example earlier on.
Yep.
So what we first set out to do was to say, what are the things that humans succumb to that they don't need to succumb to? And they're the conditions that we covered. Cardiovascular, blood pressure. I mean, blood pressure for all sorts of conditions, cancers, skin cancers, bowel cancers, etc. So the focus was, can we pick off the stuff that shouldn't kill us and detect that early? And that was the starting point. And we've expanded from there and expanding from there pretty quickly. I mean, over the next 2 years, maybe earlier, the current R&D trajectory has us pretty much picking up 90% of all human health conditions.
Wow.
Just through your phone, through the sort of capability I touched on.
For those that aren't technologists or scientists, how is the Helfie developed AI different? How did you approach building the model and the algorithm, as you say?
Yeah, so it's a big platform, yeah. So the first base layer of the algorithm build was, could we recognize a signal in the body through your phone?
Yep.
The second layer is, could we process that signal and give you an accurate reading of whatever it might be? The third layer then in the model is, can we connect that to domain knowledge? So can we connect that to a corpus of information around, let's say, respiratory conditions that would allow us to connect information and data around that. Then sitting on top of that, we do use large language models. I mean, we're agnostic to the model we use in the way we've configured our stack, but they're important.
Yep.
We have a broader model around that gives us context and information about you, who you are, where you live, because if you're coughing from Tonga, it's different from Kenya and different from New York.
Yep.
So we factor all of those sort of things in. So there's about 8 different layers in the model, and each of our capabilities sort of run through those layers. And probably in terms of condition assessment, the most important thing is the first 2 layers. Can we get a good reading of a signal? And then can we process that accurately to, north of 90% accuracy? And then how do we now connect that to other information and knowledge that makes the reading relevant to you and informative and insightful and all the things that go with providing somebody an accurate assessment of what they might be dealing with.
Yeah, and I would imagine the more you do this at scale, the more accurate the model gets. Would that be correct?
They do, correct. There is a law of diminishing returns at a certain point, but once you're beyond a certain degree of accuracy, yes, absolutely. But the sort of powerful thing about our network is that, healthcare operates in verticals. Somebody specializes in something or, we don't. We're truly horizontal. And one of the early tenets of our vision was we want to be able to take care of all human health conditions, but we also want to be able to connect biomarkers between different readings people have for different conditions.
Yeah.
And that's where you generate true intelligence and true insight around the human condition. The body's complicated, but it sends hundreds of millions of signals a day, yeah?
Yep.
It kind of tells you what's going on. And our view is if we can read and connect those, that we might be able to generate insights that are beyond what you're able to generate in healthcare today. And I'll give you an example. We had a 44-year-old woman complaining about knee pain, and her pain in her knee had nothing to do with degradation of a joint or bone or anything like that in terms of a hit, or it was the onset of early menopause.
Really?
Yeah. The algorithm detected that because it had a multitude of data points that it was triangulating as she was interacting with it. We touched on the checks that we do. I mean, we do a check for endometriosis, which is, a women's health issue. And it takes the current medical system 9 years to assess that. 9 years to connect the pain that a female is experiencing. It's done now in 60 seconds.
Jesus.
That's the dematerialization of time and space and cost that a platform like this creates in healthcare across all sorts of conditions. And they're all sort of fancy technical terms, but at the end of the day, it comes back to humans, yeah?
Yep.
And giving them insights on their health that are accurate, that they can bank on, that they can act on, that has a profound outcome on how they live their lives.
Yeah. Do you work with any partners currently?
So as I touched on earlier on, we're sort of talking with 6 governments around the world, a couple in Asia, Africa, Europe, and soon here as well, on population-wide rollouts. There'll be partnerships because we're required to work with incumbent health systems as well. So, we're blown away by what they could mean for the health of those populations and also obviously what it means for our end goal of scaling this to every human, and then also, what it means for us corporately as well in terms of building a successful and sustainable endeavour that has a shot at being the first health system that's scalable across sort of every human. And then obviously we work with companies for employee programs and those sorts of things. And then we have partnerships in algorithm development, universities, research labs, public health bodies and those sorts of things. So we sort of pretty heavily invested in networks and partnerships that help us get to our ultimate ambition.
Yeah, sounds like a really complicated thing to put together, George. So congrats on that. And not to mention capital to fund this vision.
Yeah.
What's kind of been your funding to date? Like, what do you need to kind of get from point A to point B? I'm sure it's a very long-term rollout and a lot of capital required. Talk about that.
Yeah, so a shout out to our friends at DeepSeek in China here for proving that you didn't need to spend $1 billion a month to develop sort of AI models.
Yeah.
So we've raised just north of 30 million US in capital to date. All of that's obviously gone into building the capability that I sort of took you through today. But we are sort of raising more capital. So we're about to raise another 250 mil over the next couple of months. Again, for infrastructure, product development, R&D, and also now commercialization and global rollout. So that's been the capital journey to date, and the capital journey going forward, as you've rightly touched on, is a bit deeper, but we're at a point that we can see not so much a finish line, but a starting line in terms of scaling out our capability to large populations globally.
And then I know you've built out the leadership team to a degree in the last year. Maybe talk about the team and the rationale for building the team at this time?
Yeah, so the rationale really is opportunity related.
Yeah.
We're sort of drowning in opportunities, I'd like to say, all around the world. And you need wonderful humans who buy into the endeavor to be able to, navigate and traffic all of those to some success. So it's been a real need for us to identify talent globally that can join the organisation and stitch together opportunities in markets here. We've just appointed our Chief Medical Officer here in the US. We're building a significant presence out in the UK and Europe and then, Asia as well. So it's been a requirement for the business to find super talented people that can help us operationalise what we do. And then on the engineering side, we've been looking to attract great engineering talent across, Web3, AI and mobile now for the last couple of years, and we continue to do that at a rate of knots. So the step up in terms of headcount is really a step up that's commensurate with, where we are and, what's ahead of us in terms of opportunity.
Yeah. With companies such as yours, timing means a lot, and it just seems like you've caught the wave at the right time. How impactful do you think AI is going to be, like literally in the next 2 years on individual health outcomes?
Yeah, so I love your point about timing, and I'm just guessing this as a stat, Tom, so I don't know it based on any evidence, but I reckon 60 or 70% of business success is timing. And in our context, you've got governments around the world under extraordinary pressure.
Yep.
In terms of health systems, declining outcomes, ever-rising costs with no horizon to change. And you've got a sector that is, I think, the most profitable on the planet.
Yep.
So something's got to give, and something's got to give in a significant way. And we present a capability here that just inverts the entire system. And that is gratifying in some respects because we saw that as what we thought the forces would be that could conspire to make our opportunity sort of real. In terms of the impact of AI, well, in our case, AI is an input technology. I mean, mobile, its capability, the sort of sensing stuff we spoke about, Tom, are important for capturing high-fidelity information about your body.
Yep.
The other one is Web3 and distributed ledger technologies and decentralization. They are really important capabilities in terms of the utility that we're building and the global scale that we're looking to provide our platform across. And then obviously AI. And so in our case, as I touched on, I think we'll cover most human health conditions for a couple of cents through your phone. And if you think about that at a humanity-wide scale or even at a country-wide scale here in the US, across just under 400 million people, the fact that you can get early detection and data on conditions just profoundly changes outcomes for people, right? I mean, you pick up a skin cancer in your 20s, you don't die from it. You pick it up in your 50s and, or your 30s, and it could be a binary outcome, yeah?
Yep.
We're seeing that bowel cancers now are presenting in 30-year-olds. They weren't 10 years ago. So again, just being able to identify risk in your stools to pick up those sorts of things, and so on. So I think from our viewpoint, that's the entire design of our system. How do we have a positive outcome at a human level? And in terms of AI more generally, it's going to depend largely on the version of AI we get and who controls what. And that's probably a deeper conversation. But in terms of healthcare, AI has been applied across the board, to replumb healthcare. It's been applied in insurance. It's been applied in diagnostics.
The whole system is so inefficient. It's insane, like every part of it, right?
It is. And a lot of that is replumbing, profit shifting.
Yeah.
And again, we have a different approach. So we're building a whole new operating system for health that sits on the human side around early detection and prevention and, optimizing your health almost autonomously through knowledge. And then you've got the system that we know today, which, all of the innovation we see in there is all about taking or cutting someone's lunch, or doing something better because it has to be done better. And no doubt that'll flow through to hopefully better outcomes for humans at some point. But so we draw a real line in the sand to say that's a system that fixes people when they get sick and people present late to that system. AI won't change that, yeah? We need a new system for early detection. We need a new system for prevention that can scale across every human, yeah? That's super low cost to access, that sits next to you all the time, that hopefully avoids us needing that system. And if we do need it, we're in it early enough that we can be treated successfully.
Yeah. And so we're sitting here in kind of September of 2025. When you look out to 26, George, what are the 2 or 3 things that you're working on that have you really fired up about the future in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. So there's a truckload that we're working on all the time, as you can imagine. Yeah.
Yep.
So the first stuff for me is we've got a couple of large-scale population deployments. We're having conversations with countries around the world. I'm really keen to get those going. I mean, that could see us across a couple of 100 million people, maybe 500 million people in the next sort of, 12, 18 months, which will just be phenomenal.
Incredible.
I mean, I think it might even make us the largest health system in the world, full stop, by serendipity. So, the key thing I'm looking forward to is getting our capability in people's hands and being able to have the impact that I know the platform can have. Just the innovation side continues to blow me away. The sorts of things that our R&D and technical teams are building in partnership with folk around the early detection of conditions just gets me super excited. So, seeing more of those evidence within the platform. And then also, building out our infrastructure capability and our data capabilities around making sure that we can enliven human health data in a way that optimizes health outcomes. In terms of, what we see X years out, I don't know what that is. I really believe that we can build a capability here around early detection, prevention, and, this idea that we can optimize your health algorithmically.
Yep.
I do believe we can make this native to life. I believe we can make it like Wi-Fi. I believe you won't even need a phone at some point in the next 5 or 10 years. I believe we can create an infrastructure whereby this stuff just happens for all of us, and it's ambient, and it's just part of how we live, and that's stuff that we don't even think about. And anything that affects our health is monitored, assessed, flagged, worked on if need be. And then beyond that, integrating other networks into the algorithm, food systems, supply chains, environment, all the stuff.
Exercise.
Everything. The human body is a crash test dummy for commerce's worst impulses, asbestos, smoking, all that sort of stuff. I mean, the other day I read that we now have a credit card of plastic ingested in our body every couple of weeks, because of, manipulation of our supply chains, food and ingredients.
Yep.
That stuff appears in our body when there's a revelation, down the track when it's too late. We envisage an AI capability where that stuff is flagged early, quickly, so that humans know what they're dealing with and can avoid it if they can. So I'm sort of pretty excited by what that can look like. And we're having partners coming out of the woodwork to saying, hey, look, we think we can help you with this idea of health being ambient and a substrate to just human existence for everybody. And it would be phenomenal to be part of something that, edges towards that. So that sort of stuff keeps me super excited.
Our guest today is George Tomeski, CEO of Helfia.ai, a company creating hyper-personalized healthcare at scale and empowering individuals to better understand and treat conditions that might otherwise get overlooked in the current system. It's an important company that's operating in the right place at the right time, and I can't wait to see how their business and incredible tech stack evolves over the next few years. I'm Tom Ryan. We'll see you next time back in the arena.
References to specific stocks are not intended to be recommendations for specific trading behavior. Comments presented on this podcast are intended for informational and educational purposes only, and do not represent opinions or recommendations on whether to buy, sell, or hold shares of a particular stock. All investors are advised to conduct their own independent research into individual stocks before making a trading decision. In addition, investors are advised that past stock performance is no guarantee of future price performance.